I actually can't even believe how much we have to talk about, so I think we need to just jump straight into it. If you're watching this video, then you will already know by now that Taylor Swift had announced her 12th studio album, TS12, The Life of a Showgirl, and I am so excited to talk about it. In this video, I'm going to break down the track list, the information we have about the studio album so far, and deep dive a little bit into what some of these tracks might give us in terms of metaphors, subject content, and if there's any hints at what we might be able to expect sonically in there too. So we actually don't have a pretty hefty track list to be working through this time. The last album we got from Taylor, we had 30 plus songs, and it was a little bit daunting to kind of deep dive into every single one of them. I'm going to be honest. It was a lot to digest when we first got them too. So I'm kind of really excited to have a really concise and edited down track listing this time. While I'm going to have a lot to say about all of this, there actually aren't that many songs. So far, what we know about The Life of a Showgirl is that it is produced by Max Martin and Shellback as well as Taylor Swift. We know they have made magic together before, so I can't wait to see what they've done now. If you've watched the New Heights podcast interview with Taylor Swift, you'll know that she kind of explained a lot behind this album. We've got a lot more information from her than we ever have before about her albums before they've been released. So already with track 1, we have The Fate of Ophelia. I already have a lot to say about this. I can't believe how much can be extrapolated from a title alone, but even just the basic metaphors that we can garner from the character Ophelia from the Shakespeare play Hamlet, there's a lot of kind of parallels that I can understand where Taylor would kind of draw inspiration from and have a lot of stuff that she would want to talk about. So let's jump into it because this is probably the one that we have the most information about. Everything else kind of seems like stylistic titles or things that she can kind of take in a lot of different directions. Who is Ophelia? If you're familiar with Shakespeare, then you will know that the play Hamlet features a character named Ophelia. I'm not going to pretend to know everything about Hamlet. I know things on a surface level, and I like a lot of Shakespearean things kind of based on vibes more than anything else. I'm really fascinated by this idea of her using Ophelia as a muse right off the top of the album. As we know, she really likes to kind of tie her albums together with a through line. This idea of opening with Ophelia and talking about her fate is really, really interesting. Ophelia is a character that has a very tragic story. She goes crazy, climbs up a willow tree, falls to her death, drowning. Already quite dramatic and quite dark and grim. There's a lot of stuff in there that really makes me think Taylor related to, unfortunately. The character Ophelia is known for singing like a mad woman. In fact, she sings more than she speaks throughout the play. And already in there, we can understand why there are some through lines to Taylor Swift. Ophelia's kind of boxed into this role of a performer, a singer. She needs to express her feelings through this like artistic but like artificial filter. The way that she communicates with these other characters. There's a lot of men in her life, her brother, her father, who are trying to warn her about Hamlet and maybe his intentions, and that he may just be professing his love to her for reasons to make him look better. And in fact, we have a quote from Ophelia's brother: "If he says he loves you, it fits your wisdom so far to believe it." If we think about the whole Maddie Healy as a muse situation from Tortured Poets, she ignored a lot of red flags, I think, in that relationship. And Ophelia kind of like idolizes his noble mind and puts him on this moral pedestal in a way. And I think we can kind of see Taylor doing something a little bit similar with Maddie Healy, at least for that really passionate time that they were together. She, I think, kind of had her blinders on, believed what he was telling her, and ultimately turned his back on her love and left her stranded. Now, one thing I really want to mention that's an interesting through line and that a lot of people think about when they think about Ophelia is floral imagery. So there is one song that Ophelia sings where she's sort of listing all these different, herbs and flowers. And what's really interesting is that at the time, a lot of those herbs and flowers will have been used as metaphors for other things. So she's not literally singing about flowers, she's singing about other stuff, but she's using the flowers to kind of, again, shield what she's saying and protect her a little bit, which is really interesting because that's kind of what Taylor does as well with her songs. We have things like fennel and columbines, which were used as metaphors for a lot of things, but namely one of them was adultery, which is really interesting. She mentions rue and daisy, which would have been used as metaphors for sorrow and falseness. And then she does mention violets, which at the time would have been a symbol for loyalty, but after she mentions violets, she says, "But they have withered all when my father died." So there is no loyalty, is what she's hinting at. And so I think we can garner a lot just from that as well. The fact that we've seen Taylor out and about a lot, wearing these sort of floral patterns lately, and the imagery of flowers being linked very strongly to Ophelia. In fact, when she falls from the willow tree, she falls with all of her flowers that she was collecting they all fall into the river. And so you'll know this famous painting I'm sure you've seen. So I'm just gonna read straight from my notes here because I have a lot of kind of meat to this one that I really want to make sure I'm getting right. Ophelia's tragedy, as much as it is her death, is her fragile, delicate helplessness. She kind of takes what the men are saying and she really, really believes them, whether that's her brother or her father or Hamlet himself. This is a quote that I got from a YouTube video that someone was kind of breaking down Ophelia and stuff, and I just thought that this was really interesting. I'll link it down below. She says, "She is a canvas onto which others cast their paint strokes and decisions from a distance, but can never fully, truly understand." I think it's probably likely and possible that Taylor can relate to this character that is, you know, this mad woman singer singing these very poetic songs that people can't really see through and can't really understand. What's interesting though is that I don't think Taylor suffered the same fate. I don't think she, you know, fell off the willow and into the water to drown per se. So I think that might be what this song is going to be exploring. Something else worth noting is that Taylor did mention the number 47 twice in her New Heights podcast. There are a few reasons why this number might be important. The podcast episode aired on August 13th, so 47 days after that would bring us to September 29th. I have a feeling we could maybe expect something on September 29th. It is only a few days before the album is set to release. So I have a feeling that Fate of Ophelia might be a music video, might be a single of sorts, and we might get that the week of the album release, the 29th, the Monday. But something else that's really interesting is that the scene in which Ophelia dies in Hamlet is Act 4, Scene 7. So she's actually crazy. This woman is crazy. I think in terms of themes and maybe genre of music that we can expect across the whole album, I'm expecting pop. I think if we do have slower songs, we are going to get something, you know, along the lines of like Delicate or something like that. But I think she is going to open the album with a bit more of a banger. I think we haven't really heard this type of music from her in a long time. So I think she's going to want to wow on the first track. And the Fate of Ophelia kind of seems maybe like a cautionary tale. I think there's an opportunity in there for her to make some tongue-in-cheek jokes and maybe kind of poke fun at the tortured poet she was and maybe the Ophelia she was, and then kind of make her way through the song talking about how she escaped the fate of Ophelia. Something else worth mentioning about Ophelia is the album art. She is laying in water with her face just barely out of the water. Something this really makes me think of is the Lavender Haze music video. We got a lot of imagery of her just with her head floating above water and with all the flowers in the water. I think it was likely intentional that she was making this, you know, metaphor towards Ophelia even back in the Midnights era. But seeing this album art, I know she said in the podcast episode that she was wanting it to be a photo of her in the bath after a long day of performing, but I think it would be silly to think that there wasn't another meaning there. And I think the imagery of her laying in the water face up is exactly like the painting of Ophelia that is famous. So I think this is intentional imagery here. Now, track 2 is called Elizabeth Taylor, and if you do know Taylor's discography, you're aware that this is not the first time that she's mentioned Elizabeth Taylor in her lyrics. So she does previously mention Elizabeth Taylor in the song Ready For It. She has the line, "He can be my jailer, Burton to this tailor." Elizabeth Taylor is famous for having had many husbands. In fact, she had 7 husbands and 8 marriages. So she did marry one of her husbands again, Richard Burton, and she was almost just as famous for these many marriages as she was for her super, super deep acting career. She is really, really well known for being one of the greatest actresses of all time. Taylor's also obviously, of course, been scrutinized for her many relationships as well as her career. Elizabeth Taylor was in the spotlight since she was a child. She was a child actress and she started in the 40s in her films and she remained famous until her death. I think Taylor probably can relate to that as well, having started her music career extremely young. Elizabeth Taylor is known for wearing a lot of jewelry. She was known for her perfumes, which interestingly, the standard edition of the vinyl is called the Sweat and Vanilla Perfume edition. So I do have a feeling we might be hearing those words in this song. There's a few little overlaps that are really interesting. Actually, when Tortured Poets came out, a lot of people were kind of talking about one of Elizabeth Taylor's most famous films, which was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And that's because When we heard the song title, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind if you're familiar. And an interesting quote from the film that I think might have resonated with Taylor is, "I'm loud and I'm vulgar and I wear the pants in this house because somebody's got to, but I'm not a monster." Something else that struck me immediately upon seeing the track listing and the photos that went along with it is that these photos of Taylor definitely evoke Cleopatra. There's a lot of overlap in the short fringe, the dark black hair, and the headpieces. We see a lot of that in that film, and they're very iconic. So I'd be surprised if this wasn't an intentional reference to that. I think at this point we know when we have a song that is titled after a person, we're going to get quite a deep dive and quite some storytelling in this song structure. I think of songs like The Last Great American Dynasty or Clara Bow, where she's kind of comparing herself to these super, super famous women, and I can expect a very similar theme in this song. Sonically, I'm not quite sure what to expect. Track 2s, we usually get something quite bold. We do also have track 2s that are not bold, if you think of something like Champagne Problems, but for the most part, they're usually quite impactful. Think of Red, Endgame, Picture to Burn, Cruel Summer. There's a lot of track 2s that have a lot to say, and I think this is going to kind of fit within those. Something that I also thought about right away, which is going to bring us into the next song as well, is that there was a video that I'm going to put up here if I can find it.
This is unreal, Kelly. Opal and blue topaz.
Happy birthday.
You really, I mean, this is like a present for Elizabeth Taylor, not me.
You're my Elizabeth Taylor.
I'm for.
And now, of course, Elizabeth Taylor, like I mentioned, was super, super well known for wearing really big jewelry. And of course, that ring stands out immediately as something that she would have worn. But I just think it was really interesting that she said that explicitly with a camera around and that it was an opal ring, which brings us into the next song, Opalite. Track 3 on this album is called Opalite, and it immediately stood out to me because she could have just named it Opal, and she didn't. Now, the definition of opalite is a cheap alternative to natural opal when you look it up in the dictionary. And immediately what struck me was that she's referring to something being a cheap alternative to something that's natural, which kind of feels like something cheap is bad and something natural is good, just based on the way that this definition is written. Immediately, the metaphor that comes to mind is something being a cheap version of the real thing. So maybe previous loves that she experienced being cheap versions and her current boyfriend, Travis Kelce, being the real thing. What makes this really interesting is that his birthstone is opal. So it would kind of be a perfect metaphor for her to use. I wonder if that's the direction she's going to go in. I kind of expect this to be either kind of like a lover style song, being at this point in the track list, a track 3. We do usually get some big songs on a track 3. Lover is a track 3, so that's why that kind of spoke to me as well. But this feels like it could be a love song, but written with a glitter gel pen. Track 4 on this album is Father Figure, which I'm sure to most people reminded them immediately of the George Michael song Father Figure, which has been trending also on TikTok right now, and I find that really interesting timing. I am expecting some type of maybe a sample or an interpolation from the George Michael song. I think it's kind of bold to name a song after a song that already exists that's really iconic, so it feels intentional, which feels like it might be included in some type of way. One thing that I've actually been using to kind of think about what the genres and themes of these songs might be is Taylor Nation's post, where they posted the 12 photos of Taylor in orange. At the last photo in that set was of her and Sabrina Carpenter, and the last song on this album is of her and Sabrina Carpenter. So if we can go off of that, we can kind of guess that they were probably put in an order to infer track list information. And the photo that corresponds with this track is of her in the man jacket. So immediately something like Father Figure is giving me the vibe of, if this is like the man, she's the father figure, she might be in charge. Something that came to mind to me as a potential theory is that she did kind of look to Scott Borchetta for a really long time as a father figure. And I wonder if she's kind of like reclaiming this father figure title of like, I'm in charge now. Now, track 5 on this album is titled Eldest Daughter. I mean, every eldest daughter is going to have a moment with this, and myself included. I think this may potentially be the most devastating pop song ever written. I think if we are going to get a slow track on this album, it more than likely will be this one, in the sense that it might be kind of like delicate. I think she could take this down the route of feeling like she's the eldest daughter in the industry, and it's kind of you know, her responsibility to shoulder a lot of the weight of things that happen and carry a lot of weight, but also pioneer a lot of things to make it a safer place for everybody else, which is kind of the role of like an eldest daughter. This song might kind of be like a mirror ball or a You're on Your Own kid for eldest daughters. Track 6 on this album is titled Ruin the Friendship. As soon as I heard this, I thought, you know, we've kind of done this metaphor before, the word friends, but we're gonna date, so we might ruin our friendship, but it doesn't actually ruin anything because we're really in love. She could very well go down that route if this is going to be kind of bubblegum poppy. That could be a very simple metaphor for her to do, but Taylor's not usually that obvious, so she could be using it in that way and then again in many other ways like she does in other songs. But if this is not going to be about relationships, I think she has had some ruined friendships in the last year. If this is a love song though, I feel like we might get something kind of like pop rocky upbeat. I'm really excited to hear this one. I don't really know what to expect from it, and I think that's what's so exciting about it. Track 7 on this album is titled Actually Romantic. I think this will probably likely also be a love song. This could be a see, he's actually romantic. Track 7s are usually pretty interesting. They usually have a lot of lore to them, but they're not usually like the bangers or like the singles. So I kind of am expecting this one to maybe be a little bit more low key, maybe kind of like a So It Goes. Now, I don't actually have a lot to say about this one because there's not really a lot of information we can extrapolate from a title like Actually Romantic. There's not much to say about this one until we hear it, I think. Track 8s are usually bangers. I'm quite alarmed by this one because the track is titled Wish List with dollar signs for the S's, which we've never seen Taylor do. We've never seen her use what she referred to as grammatical flourishes in a song title like this before. If we look at this track placement on other albums, we're looking at things like Florida, Vigilante Shit. We have songs like August and Gorgeous, Bad Blood, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together. We have a lot of big songs at this placement, so I do have big hopes for Wishlist. Makes me think of the lyric, you know what you wanted and boy you got her. This could also maybe be a song about, you know, being something money can't buy, or something about manifesting, you know, things from your wish list and making them a reality. Now, track 8 is really baffling to me, and when I first saw the track list, I really was kind of taken aback by this one, and I really didn't know what to make of it. Track 8 on this album is called Wood, like a tree. And genuinely, when I was writing my notes, first thing I wrote was I'm stumped, and I was immediately upset that I made a really horrible dad joke, but I think Taylor would want that. I did have to Google if there are other definitions for the word wood or metaphors and things like that like didn't immediately come to me. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those titles that once she uses it in context, you go, oh. A few theories that I have after looking some stuff up and digging around a bit. Obviously, the expression knock on wood came to mind right away. I think it would have been really obvious for her to title a song that. Maybe she's going to be using the word wood in a couple of different ways. So that could be one of them. When I was looking things up, there was a few definitions that came up that I thought could be interesting as like avenues for her to explore. Wood specifically as a metaphor is usually used for things like strength and resilience, like wood being really strong. So she could be touching upon stuff in that sort of light. But I'm going to say what everybody's thinking. This could also be horny Taylor writing a song about wood. It could be a double entendre. It could be just saying straight up what it is. I don't really know what to expect from her at this point, so we're gonna throw it out there as a potential theory because who knows with her. Track 9 on this album is called Cancelled, in all caps with an exclamation mark. Now, the first thing that came to my mind is that she only has 2 other songs in her discography that have exclamation marks at the end of them. So I was kind of like, is this going to be a me exclamation mark song, or is this going to be a slut exclamation mark song? Because those are 2 very different songs. But I think the song being in all caps gives me the idea that we're going to be kind of going more in a me direction. Not to say that I think we're going to get me 2.0, but I think this is going to be a very like anthemic, upbeat, possibly rock pop sort of sound. Now, Travis did mention in the podcast that he said this song was a banger. And what I find really interesting is that they kind of weren't talking about genre too much across the board. He said it was fun and it was upbeat. She said things like joyful and effervescent, because of course she did. But nobody specifically said whether it was pop or rock pop or country pop. Now, we know with Max Martin and Shellback, it's going to be pop of some sort, but I have a feeling that something like this, being a banger and being anthemic, could kind of go in a rock pop anthem direction. And if she's going to be talking about canceled, I'm sure this is going to be referring to like maybe like a Reputation retrospective, times she's been canceled, or the cancelable nature of things. I'm just really curious to see how she unpacks this one. I do have high hopes for it though, because if Travis thinks it's a banger, I'm probably gonna think it's a banger too. That brings us to track 10 on the album, Honey. Again, this is one of those songs that you can't really get much from the title. It's one word, it's a very simple word, similar to Wood. You're kind of like, okay, it's honey. This has potential to be the dress of the album. I think if we're gonna have a song that's kind of sultry, this placement could be interesting. Now, this is another one that Travis did say was a banger on the podcast, so I am expecting a lot from it in that sense. When I was reflecting on interesting ways to use the title Honey, something that came to mind was kind of like a sarcastic, like, honey, you have no idea. And I wonder if that's kind of gonna be her like clapback anthem pop bad bitch vibe, something strong and powerful to kind of come off of canceled and into our final track of the album, which is Life of a Showgirl featuring Sabrina Carpenter. I think a lot of us saw this one coming, and I'm really, really excited to hear what they've created together. I have a feeling this is gonna give like a little cheeky, maybe show-tuney cabaret vibe, exploring fame and how it makes you crazy, and maybe like exploring ways that fame can screw you over, referring back to like the Masters situation. We've seen what's probably a lyric in the title of her Spotify playlist that was, "And baby, that's show business for you." So I have a feeling if that's going to be included in any of the songs, it's probably going to be this one. And I have a feeling that she's going to end the album on a high note. Something with Sabrina, I think, is going to be more showstoppy. I'd be really surprised if this is a slower song. I really don't think we're actually going to have very many slow songs on this album. And if we were to have a slower one, I think it would be actually romantic. If we're talking about Max Martin, Taylor Swift slow songs, we're talking about songs like Delicate and Wildest Dreams. So they're not exactly slow. They're slower, but they're more ballads than they are pop bangers. I think songs that could maybe also fall into that category, which is like we're getting a bit off, but like a Don't Blame Me or even a So It Goes could maybe be perceived as like slower, more intimate songs. What else I want to add here that I just want to preface by saying is absolutely not me, the crowd, chanting more. If Taylor spent all this time in Sweden recording with Max and Shellback, and she met with the photographers from the Reputation era to shoot this album, I think there's a high probability that she probably recorded the rep vault tracks and did photos for the rep vault tracks with the same team. So I think some of the imagery in this album, specifically this alternate album art, really is evoking stuff from the Reputation cover shoot. These might be Easter eggs, these might just be coincidences, these might just be parallels if we're going to be exploring similar themes from that time, but I think there's a high likelihood that these songs have now been recorded. I think it's probably going to be very important to her that the vault tracks stand up to the initial album, so it would make sense for her to use the same people. And Max Martin and Shellback didn't come back to do the re-recordings because they didn't want to redo songs that they had already done. So I think this would be a great opportunity for them to go, of course we're going to record this with you, because they wouldn't have finished those songs at the time. And I could be totally wrong. These could be songs that were finished way before this album was, or they haven't even been done yet, like we thought Rep TV was done for a really long time. But I think it kind of makes sense that if she was spending time with that team and working on stuff that was kind of similar, I think she would have gone back and visit that. I know that she said the vault tracks were fire in a interview with the Time Magazine Person of the Year article, which was a long time ago. She would have known what vault track she wanted to pick before she finished them, so she probably knew what they were going to be before they had become what they are now or will become at some point. As to what kind of pop I think we might get from this album is really unclear. We have some photos in the Taylor Nation post of her with her piano, with the surprise song piano, with a guitar. I think this might actually be more instrumentally forward than some of the last albums we got that were synth pop but still weren't pop. I think there's a chance we get a sound that is reminiscent of maybe Marina and the Diamonds, something a bit dramatic and over the top that has pop with instruments and a live band. We know she loves her live band and that her band is really important to her, and I'm sure she's going to want to tour this. So it'd be really interesting to see how that pop sound manifests. But for some reason, I kind of just have like a Marina and the Diamonds Electra Heart type of sonic atmosphere in my head when I think about this album, but with twists, surely, because she's not just going to give us something that exists already. If I had to guess what sound we were going to get from this album compared to sounds that we've already gotten from her in her catalog before, I think that this is going to be sonically somewhere between a 1989 and a Reputation sound, possibly with some rock pop element. I think we're going to get content that is as deep and as rich as like a Folklore or an Evermore in terms of lyrics. I am so incredibly excited for this album. I do fear that this is going to jump to the top of my ranking, which is not something I've felt for the last couple of albums of hers. Don't get me wrong, I love Tortured Poets Department. I loved Midnights. Midnights is in my top 3 albums by her. I think there's really just something special about this rollout. It feels really important to her. It feels really good to her. She seems to be just like really proud of this work, and I think the way that it is like precise and concise and conceptual is going to be something really special that we haven't seen from her before. I'm someone who really loves to keep data of albums that I like to listen to, so I have a spreadsheet where I've ranked every single Taylor Swift song and every single album as per my taste. I will leave a link in the description to this template of the ranking sheet so you can use it if you want to do the same thing. I also really love, before a Taylor album comes out, to do kind of like a preliminary ranking of how I think I'm gonna like the songs based simply just off the track titles and what I think they might be about. I'm just gonna go through my pre-release ranking just to kind of have something to look back at once I've listened to it. So I like to rank songs out of 10 and then do an average for the album, and that gives me my score for the total album. Currently at this time I have Reputation in the top spot with a 9.2 out of 10 score. If that gives you any idea of how much I love Max Martin and Taylor Swift together. So based off of just the things that I was talking about and how deep I think she's going to go in sort of these songs, the Fate of Ophelia, right off the top, I think is going to be a 10 out of 10 for me personally. I love her literary references. I love when she uses sort of these like tragic female muses. I really just love the drama of it, and I think she's probably gonna, she's going to do something really special with it. Elizabeth Taylor, I ranked an 8 out of 10 just based off the concept and the title, only because I'm really curious to see what she does with it. I do feel, just upon initial feeling, that it's something she's already explored, in the sense that we have Clara Bow, we have The Last Great American Dynasty. I'm curious to see how she spins this one, but just off of the initial concept, I ranked it an 8, only because I didn't want to rank all of them a 10. I had to rank a few of them lower. I'm in love with this concept. Hope they're all 10s. Track 3, Opalite, I ranked a 9 out of 10. I really love this idea of something, you know, being a fake version of something real, kind of a lot of depth to explore within that, and the fact that it's Opal, the real thing, is Travis's birthstone. I think there's a lot for her to play with in there that could be really sweet and cute. Father Figure, I'd ranked an 8 out of 10. If there is a sample or an interpolation of George Michael, I'm really just curious to see how she fits that into everything, and if not, I'm just curious to see how she explores this title. Eldest Daughter, I've ranked a 10 out of 10. I think this song is going to ruin my life in the best way, and I think I will never emotionally recover from it, and I can't wait to hear it. Ruin the Friendship, I have also ranked a 10 out of 10. I think this concept, as much as on initial kind of first glance, I think it's kind of a played out thing. I don't expect for her to be reaching for something played out, and I think that she probably will explore this title in a really different way that we're not expecting, so I have high hopes for this one. Actually Romantic, so far I've rated an 8 out of 10, again, just because I can't get much from the title. If this does have potential to be a slower one, I tend on the kind of more pop albums to reach for the slower songs less. Wishlist, I have ranked a 9 out of 10. I really am curious to see what this one is about, and I'm really interested just to see what she does with it. Would, I've ranked an 8 out of 10, only because I can't for the life of me figure out what she's going to be talking about, but I really want this one to surprise me. I really want this one to kind of really hit in a way that I would have never expected, and to be perfectly honest, there are not many ways that I expect this song to go. If this is a boner jam, then she'll have amazed me in ways that I never have expected her to. I almost kind of hope that it is. The next 3 tracks we're just gonna power through because I have ranked all of them. Cancelled, Honey, and The Life of a Showgirl, 10 out of 10. Based on Travis calling them bangers and Sabrina Carpenter being featured on the last one, I really am just, I have high hopes for these 3. There's something about Honey that feels like it's gonna be a little sultry, a little sexy. There's a lot in there that I think I'm really gonna love. High hopes. That means with this ranking so far, this album is sitting at a 9.17 average out of 10, which puts it in my top 3. It's just losing to Evermore by 0.01. I'm really excited to hear this album. I'm really curious to see how this rollout goes. I think we'll probably get some other surprises along the way as well. We have 7 weeks between now and the release of this album. I feel like this has potential to be album of the year, and I know that's putting a lot of pressure on it, and she herself has put a lot of pressure on it in the way that she's talking about it and the way that she presented it even to Max Martin and to Shellback. She's usually quite humble about things, so I have high hopes because she is telling us to have high hopes, basically. Something I like to keep track of in my spreadsheet too are the songs that I've ranked 10 out of 10. I have a Spotify playlist that I link down below that is my 10 on 10 songs from her discography. Don't come at me. They are the ones that I love the most. You are allowed to love whichever ones you like most. But I'm really excited to see what songs from this album make it into that playlist. If you have any theories about what these tracks will be about, or genres, sound, inspirations, ideas, please leave them in the comments down below. I can't wait to chat with everybody about their theories. And as always, they are just theories. Please don't get attached to any of the ideas that we're talking about in this video. I can't wait to further explore things as we have things revealed to us throughout this album rollout. I'm really excited for this era, and I just can't wait to talk more about it. Please, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be posting a lot more videos talking about all of the different music I like too. I'm someone who's just extremely passionate about music, and I can talk about it all day. And as much as Taylor Swift is my favorite artist, I have a lot of other artists that I love a lot too, and I really want to be doing some reaction videos in the future as well, particularly to this album, but to some other ones coming out. So if there's anything you want to see from me, please leave it in the comments down below, and I look forward to reading them. Now I gotta go think about what I'm gonna wear to this tour. Bye!